2 Timothy chapter 4. We're in this long list of applied ministry. When I was in Bible college, we would have called this practical ministry in verse 5. But you keep your head in all situations, endure hardship, do the work of an evangelist, discharge all the duties of your ministry. We talked about keeping your head in all situations. I talked about enduring hardship, and I presented my theory that Timothy did not have the spiritual gift of evangelism. And the reason I say that is because Paul said, do the work of an evangelist. So what's the work of an evangelist? Well, I'm sure it's not limited to this, but it includes at least telling people the good news. And how you're wired has a whole lot to do with that, as well as your spiritual gift. I've known a few people with what I believe is the gift of evangelism. It leaks out of them. It gets into almost all of their conversations. I know a guy that stopped at McDonald's one morning and began a conversation with a guy, which ended with him taking that guy to a church that he knew it was in Joplin, Missouri, and baptized the guy. I mean, I almost can't even relate to that, because my nature, some of it is, I will admit, is pure selfishness. It's purely about my comfort level and me nurturing my comfort level. Some of it is temperament. I'm kind of an ambivert, meaning there are times when I can be outgoing and gregarious, but there are a lot of times when I am an introvert, and I kind of just there are times when I prefer to seclude myself from other people, and I tell you, on airplanes, I'm really that way. In social gatherings where I'm not in charge, a lot of times I tend to be that way. Well, people of my temperament and nature are going to struggle to do the work of an evangelist, because talking to people about the good news is work, because talking to people at all is work. Well, there are other times for guys like me, men and women, people like me, that bringing up Christ and the good news is not work. It seems natural. And now I'm not qualified to give a full-on presentation about different kinds of evangelism that work. But I know enough to say one of the kinds of evangelism that I grew up in my teenage and early 20s with is the idea of confrontational evangelism. When I was a freshman in college at Oklahoma State, our campus ministry produced a newspaper, and really what it was just a newspaper formatted tract. It presented the gospel, it presented scripture, it presented Jesus this was in 1971. So remember what 1971 was like, college campuses were populated by hippies. Liberalism was beginning to take the tilt. And it was all about, hey, I'm not hurting anyone, so I can do what I want. Well, our campus minister, he created or figured out some strategic spots on the edges of the campus where we could post ourselves and start handing out these papers to everyone and hoping that a conversation would occur. My place was right outside literally across the street from the campus, on Campus Corner, where people were coming. I mean, it was a well-trodden route, but boy, I was so uncomfortable. Another kind of confrontational approach to evangelism is what was termed evangelism explosion, and it hinged on a question. If you died tonight, where would you wake up? Legitimate question, a worthy question. But it was designed, the program of this was designed so that you would ask this question this is not the only application, but one of the primary applications was you would ask this question to strangers. I never got comfortable with that. I mean, one of the things was you just go to the mall. And if you saw somebody sitting on one of the benches, sit down next to him and open the conversation. Oh, I never got comfortable with that. I mean, it was like, well, there are times when that question is the right question for that moment, for that person. For people like me, that moment is created by my relationship with them. So for people like me to do this kind of confrontational evangelism, it's probably not going to work. I'm going to be bad at it, and boy, it just is. I don't have any motivation for it, because one of the motivations back then was, don't you want to go to heaven? I mean, if you are a true believer, wouldn't you want to tell everybody about it? And the answer to that is, I do want to go to heaven, and I do want to tell as many people as I can, but I kind of want, what works for me is talking to friends. All right. The work of an evangelist is going to put us in a position to step away from our comfort zone. I believe that's one of the things Paul is saying to Timothy. You're going to have to get out of your comfort zone and work at this. Okay. For people like me, I still think a lot of the most effective, I would even say most of the most effective work of an evangelist happens with people that they have a relationship with. I don't think that this is a get out of jail free card where, if you're uncomfortable with it, then gosh, it's not for everybody. Back away. You don't have to do that. I don't think that. I especially don't think that for ministers who have been designated to the role of leading a group of believers, of Christians. So, our culture today, in my opinion, doesn't lend itself very well to confrontational evangelism. I mean, think about it. I don't know about your neighborhood, but in my neighborhood, we have one family who spends any time at all in the front yard. Everybody else, they remotely open the garage door, drive the car in, close the garage door, and you almost never see. And you know what? That's me too. It's crazy, isn't it? I have a friend who did his master's degree at seminary on why our culture is the way it is, and he said there's a few things. One is air conditioning. If you think about it, back in the day, before air conditioning was in every home, people spent time out on the front porch to escape the heat of inside the house. And so there was exchange in the neighborhood because we were on the front porch. The second thing is garages with garage door openers. And a third thing is television. We relate to what's on the screen, and we're captivated by it. We spend more time watching TV than anything other than work. Okay, I think he's probably right. But what I'm saying is, for people like me who do not have the gift of evangelism, we're probably gonna need, we have to. It's not like we're gonna need. That was a misspoken concept. We have to do the work of evangelism. And for people like me, that means do the work of connecting with people to build relationships. And from the platform of that relationship, then we ask the question, if you died tonight, where would you wake up? Now, some people say the evangelistic crusade is a dinosaur and people are not interested, it won't work anymore. I don't think I necessarily agree with that. I am old enough to remember when we had, I only remember this like once or twice, but we had a 2-week revival at our little bitty church in southwest Kansas. The building would only hold like 100 people, and we'd pack in 80, 90, 100 people for 14 days. I was just a little boy in grade school, so I had nothing to do with it, except I knew that was it. We showed up. I don't, maybe that happens still today, but I'm not in the world I live in. I do think, though, a gifted evangelist is capable of presenting the gospel in a way that will connect with people. And those are the people that ought to be, they give them a platform, give them a way to do what God has gifted them to do. I read once that about 15% of the church has the gift of evangelism. Now, how scientifically derived that percentage number is, couldn't tell you. But I'm in my experience, that's pretty close to it. If you do have the gift of evangelism, turn yourself loose. Go for it. If you don't, if you're like I believe Timothy and I believe myself to be, then do the work of an evangelist. Well, okay, I've really squeezed the blood out of that turnip, so I'm going to move on next time on So Care with Stevie Boy.